What's up, everybody? Gonna talk about some woo woo stuff. It's probably gonna sound sane and rational compared to the real world right now. But let's talk about magnetic fields and the overall imbalance in the force going on right now. I can see it in everybody right now. A lot of people are kind of expecting something big to happen soon. And I don't know how much of that is because, rational thinking does lead one to think that they got to do something pretty soon here between now and November, let's say. But we also have an overall weakening magnetic field of the Earth. And I like to throw in for the flat earthers that a flat magnet has the exact same magnetic field. I don't know why. For some reason, people tell me since the Earth is flat, then there's no magnetic fields and the sun can't go through cycles. And I don't think I'll ever understand that line of thinking. But a typical diagram showing the interaction between the sun and Earth magnetic fields usually looks like this. And, we can measure the solar wind blasting away at us. But I view things more like this, a bunch of overlapping magnetic fields. And this is very crude, not to scale, but it kind of illustrates what I have in my mind about everything pushing and pulling on each other. And I think this scales up to incomprehensible levels, and we don't really understand it all. I mean, seriously, our best model of how the universe works is 95% of it is dark matter, invisible, and you can't measure it, but it's there. And the reason for that is they only account for gravity being the only force of the universe, when gravity itself is just a theory that's hard to quantify. But then all of this scales down to the quantum level, and I still remember 7th grade physical science, seeing a model of the solar system, seeing a model of an atom, and saying, well, it's the same thing. If we had a microscope powerful enough to look down on the third electron away from the nucleus, we might see a bunch of people sitting in the middle of the street trying to stop electron change. Okay, I thought it was funny. But point being is we have all of these invisible, magnetic, and who knows what other fields that are pulling us through this cosmic soup at incredibly huge scales and incredibly small scales. And right now we've got a weakening magnetic field that is throwing off our usual vibes and affecting all of us. And it's getting weird. So I thought I'd talk about some of the more esoteric, what's it all about when you get down to it kind of stuff, And it'll either make sense or it won't. You guys ever think about acupuncture and how did they come up with that? Let me ask it this way. Do you think that they had super advanced diagnostic machines that were imaging the chi flow throughout the body? Or do you think that the ancients were much more in tune with the natural and spiritual world that we're in? Here's what I think. Just a couple years ago, they found a 200-year-old monk in a cave, and they say, no, he's not dead. He's just in a deep meditation. And this isn't the only one. I've tried to do a video on this, and they shut me down on it. I guess it looks too graphic for this platform, but you can Google it and you'll find several just mummified monks. And they say that they're still alive. There's no telling what they've got going on right now. He could be in a completely different density or plane of existence right here next to us, interacting with different entities that don't know that we're here. Do you know what true magic really is? It's using jinn or demons or whatever you want to call them, different density entities, for lack of better terminology, that can affect our physical world behind the scenes. That is beneficial for the practitioner of the magic. And what they say about it in Islam is that they intercept the orders coming down from the angels. And these are basically the orders for everyone, what they're going to do, how life is going to play out. Remember that point for later, where everyone is receiving their marching orders from heaven. As above, so below, on a different level than you're usually thinking about it, probably. But let's say the magician wants the king assassinated. The jinn isn't going to manifest and pick up a sword and go after him. He's going to go to the king's brother, who's next in line to the throne, and influence him with the whole "this could all be yours" song and dance. And now the old king's gone and nobody's the wiser. Now just think about if that is actually true and works. It's a trip on so many levels. The basic level of our reality here is these multi-generational aristocratic families that really run things, not the people that we hear about. We all know they own all of the media, so if they don't want their name said, it's not getting said. But they have probably been dealing with otherworldly entities for centuries. It just makes sense to me that the people that own everything would know these kind of tricks. But that's getting sidetracked. The important part is, let's say this is your reality. This little emoji dude combines your whole reality of tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. The idea here is that reality came from Source, God. That reality didn't start with you. It started somewhere else and was beamed down. Otherwise, the jinn wouldn't be able to intercept the message, right? And I'm just dealing in general concepts here. And hopefully something will kind of make sense after rolling through these. Maybe not, though. Okay, let's go to an example that I heard Manly P. Hall talk about. And that's the idea that the ancients believed that the sun was basically beaming our reality into existence. The sun was the source of everything. And this really makes a lot of sense when you sit down and think about it. Maybe it'd be a little more accurate to say the source of all life comes from the sun. They knew how to grow plants, so, they understand that a plant has to have sunshine to grow healthy. And then you eat the plant and you get energy, or an animal, a cow eats the grass and processes it into big old beefsteaks. So it would be very safe and logical to say that the sun is the base source of all life energy. The plant is just packaged sunlight that you consume. So I can totally see why ancient cultures would worship the sun. But then Hall takes that thought a step further, and he definitely adds an emphasis that the air is not just the basic molecules that we think of, but more the concept of the ether. It is a living thing in of itself. It's this cosmic soup of all of those molecules and all of the electromagnetic forces. And if you've ever done a good hard trip, good acid or shrooms or anything, ayahuasca, DMT especially, you get down to that ether, the fabric of this reality. And it's something that's really pretty much impossible to explain to people that haven't experienced it. You guys that have been there, you know what I'm talking about. It can break down the veil that makes you feel isolated and mortal and let you know that you're just a drop in the bucket of this cosmic soup that's always been here. You do hallucinate, but that's not what it's all about. It's hard to explain. But it's something that makes you intuitively understand that you're part of something bigger than just you. Where we live our whole lives feeling small and isolated, and a good trip can set you straight and let you know that, well, okay, nothing's changed. You're still here. I'm still here. And this is all still going on. Just like it has since the beginning of time. This is modern art, but look at Mayan and Aztec art, and it's heavily influenced by ethnobotanicals, let's say. And they viewed the world as an emanation, and rightly so. They did a lot of shrooms. This is a known fact. If you realize that you are just a tiny molecule in a small second blip of time compared to the larger organism that is everything and is eternally going on, whether you're here or not, well, then something else is the source of all this. Why not the sun? And by the way, the ancients thought that all of the heavens, the planets and everything, affected what happens on Earth. That's why we have astrology. But the idea that Hall brought up is he was comparing this to television stations back in his time, and now we have a lot more going on than just that, but think of it as your cell phone signals or your computer, whatever you're watching this on. I'm uploading this video to Source, and then Source is going to broadcast it out to everybody else. And this signal is running through the air. It's completely invisible to all of us. And unless you have your cell phone to pick up that signal, then you'll never even know it exists. But at the same time, all around through the networks, there's millions of other people using different phones and computers, and all of these signals are bouncing around all over the place. But this signal comes through loud and clear to your device with no interference from any of that other stuff that's going on. There's millions of people having different conversations and watching other videos, and that's not interfering with your signal. It's just coming from source to you. Okay, well, let's replace the cell phone with the human body. It's just a device. It's a vessel. It's one that we pick up and inhabit for 100 years if all goes well. Well, every signal that is coming into this body, this device, could be being beamed here from an outside source, just like the cell phone signals that you don't know are all around you. You don't see the signals that are being beamed to all of the other living organisms on Earth. All right, let's talk about this in another way, and hopefully it's in the same ballpark. This is really just deep thoughts, man. Let's talk about the idea of inner spaces and outer spaces. Let's say you're sitting in a dark room, you flip the light switch on, the light bounces off the wall, it bounces into your eyes, and then goes from your eyes into your brain, and you process it. So that's an outer space that you are observing. Now, an inner space is, let's say you stub your toe. Well, it's shooting a signal up through your leg and through your body and reaching your brain, and in between there are the inner spaces. Or you take a bite of food and your taste buds send the signal through the inner spaces to where it registers to your consciousness. Say the word hello in your head right now. Okay, you just heard that inner voice somewhere in your head, and for one thing, you actually heard it. Without any sound waves being produced, you heard yourself say that. So that had to be coming from somewhere outside of where your consciousness resides. And this again would be an inner space between you and the source of whatever it is that you're consuming. So now, what is the difference between outer spaces and inner spaces? There's really no difference. It's coming to your consciousness from somewhere outside of your consciousness. Well, then you get down to the really big question. Is all of this really happening out there? Or is it all happening in here? These are all just signals that I am able to observe through a few little senses here that are apparently outside of my consciousness because everything is separated by those inner spaces, even at the closest levels. Is anybody still here? Have I ran everybody off yet? Too crazy here? I'll do the best I can with René Descartes. He basically came up with the whole concept of the matrix 500 years ago or whatever. In his meditations, he basically starts off by saying, anything that I can shed the least little bit of doubt on, I am going to remove from what I believe. And a basic long story short is, okay, my eyes can play tricks on me. I can hear things at times. So my senses can deceive me. Therefore, I can't believe them as absolute truths. So by proxy, everything that I have learned through my senses, which is about everything, can be fallible. I mean, we dream at night, and when you're dreaming, the situation you're in seems just as real as any time when you're awake. So how do I know, the example he uses is, how do I know that I'm sitting here in front of this fire? How do I, basically, how do I even know that I have hands here to write with? And he even goes as far as to say that everything that he is experiencing could be an enchantment, an illusionment from a malevolent demon. So ultimately, if you can't believe your senses because your senses trick you, you can't even believe that you're 100% awake because you can be dreaming and it seems 100% real when you're dreaming. Well, then what is there that I can say 100% beyond any shadow of a doubt there is that exists? Well, basically, just the fact that I exist is the only thing that I can prove exists. I think, therefore I am. If I didn't exist, and if I wasn't real, then I wouldn't be able to question whether or not this is real. So this has to be real, so I have to be real. Then he ponders, is there not a God, or whatever I may call him, who puts into me the thoughts I am now having? But why do I think this, since I myself may perhaps be the author of these thoughts? And that's the million-dollar question here, huh? This has been debated for 500 plus years, so there's no right or wrong answer to this. Philosophy ain't mathematics. But Descartes answers, if the objective reality of any of my ideas turns out to be so great that I am sure the same reality does not reside in me, either formally or immanently, and hence that I myself cannot be its cause, it will necessarily follow that I am not alone in the world, but that some other thing, which is the cause of this idea, also exists. So let's go back to the dark room and you're flipping on the light. If you flip on the light and you see the wall and you somehow find out for sure that that wall is really there, the reality of that wall is absolute truth, and that it's not just in your head, it doesn't just reside in me, well, then something else has to be the source of that reality, because you didn't cause it to happen, but it is happening. And like I said, there's not necessarily a point to all of this, it's just an area of thought that I'm talking about. But another thing that I would add in here is, in our modern world, we have kind of the Big Bang idea of how the world operates, that it was created, and then that's it. It was just created. As to where the ancients thought of it as it's being created. And I think this is a much more accurate way of looking at things. Because this reality isn't a hammer. You don't make it and then it's just there. It's a living, evolving, expanding existence. So instead of today where we'd say, did God create the world? You'd ask, is the world being created by God? Plato had a word for this and I can't think of it right now. But it's the idea that all of reality is being emanated constantly from source. And basically that we are all parts of one big organism that is God. God is the trees, it's the birds, it's the animals, it's the humans. It's all of reality. Eastern philosophies call it the Om. The Bible called it, let there be sound. It's the constant vibration that makes up everything that we call reality. And the vibrational field makes a lot of sense because there's nothing truly solid in anything around us. You know, I mean, you look at your wall and you see a solid wall, but it's 99.9% empty space in between electrons and neutrons and a magnetic field holding everything together. But it's mostly empty space with just an energy field holding everything together. Take a hydrogen molecule. If that nucleus in the center were the size of the head of a Sharpie dot on a wall, how far away would you draw the electron? 2 miles. So there is a very strong energy field there that we really can't detect. Just imagine, something the size of a BB having a gravitational pull on something 2 miles away. There's something much more than gravity going on here. Anyway, before I go off on molecular physics, let's see if I can rein this in and try to make some sense out of all this. We are in a time of a weakening magnetic field, and I think I've pretty well just shown that everything is all energy and not so much substance. These energy changes are affecting everybody and, to different degrees. And the world's just getting crazy. A lot of that's on purpose, but it is getting crazy out there. I think there's a pretty decent philosophical argument that everything is being projected from a source, for lack of better terminology. And if that is the case, then it makes the magnetic changes even more important to us. I haven't been able to find this study, but I've heard Bennett Suspicious Observer say that there's a study with mice in a zero magnetic field environment, and they all just went Mad Max, like full carnage. So who knows? But I have been seeing some people say things. I can tell they're thinking different lately from what they would normally be willing to put out on the air on YouTube. And I'm sure a lot of you are like me. You can feel the subtle differences. Some days everything just feels thick and I don't know, kind of an anxious energy. But, I've heard some people saying that it makes them tired. But then back to my question at the beginning of the video, did the ancients have imaging machines to figure out how the chi flowed in the body? I don't think so. I think they were in tune with the subtle energies. Somebody really wise and really in tune sat down and figured out how all the energy through their body flowed. It could probably sense where energy blocks were in other people and therefore came up with acupuncture to alleviate those blockages and get everything back working normal. And I'm sure there's still yogis today that has spent years in a cave and understand how every little bit of energy flows through their body and how it works. And I think it's things like that where the ancients were more advanced than us. I think a lot of the things that we wonder about today were things they didn't give a second thought a few thousand years ago. Anyway, just thought I'd make a weird video, really just as a distraction from all the weirdness going on in the world. And I'm sure quite a few people are thinking this was brought on from a recent hallucinogenic experience. I really wish it was, but I've just been deep into philosophy lately. Honestly, I wish I could get some shrooms right now, but it's about that time. And I think that those and other things have been powerful teachers that have taught mankind huge amounts of knowledge about the universe. If you've never done it, I will say unequivocally that you should do it at some point in your life. Just don't overdo it and you'll be fine. But I think those tools can get you probably 75% of the way of what a yogi or some deeply spiritual practitioner will attain in their lifetimes. One of the best quotes I know is of a Spanish priest that was hanging out with the Aztecs, and he said, "I have drank mushroom wine and my heart weeps." And, that's something that probably doesn't make any sense to somebody that's never done it. But the people that have, exactly what that means. But the main reason that I bring that up is through the use of tools like that, you do feel like everything is being projected and emanating, and that you're just a receiver on that vibrational frequency. And ultimately, that this whole reality is just being projected, is being emanated. I don't know how else to say it, so I'm going to stop trying. If you made it this far, congratulations. You're a trooper. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Static out.